Dr. Stacker, you're conventionally trained, yet you chose to build your practice very differently. I personally am grateful for that. What was the moment where you realized the traditional healthcare model wasn't giving patients everything they needed and that you needed to pivot?
Well, actually, I was a computer programmer. That was my first career. And I went to medical school when I was 35. So I was already on a different trajectory. And in medical school at MSU College of Osteopathic Medicine, I was lucky enough to have an elective available in functional medicine.
Hmm.
And functional medicine, I took that elective and I loved it. I thought it was exactly what I was looking for in medicine and why I went into medicine because I really wanted to help people optimize their health. And I just knew there was no way I was going to be able to do that kind of practice in a traditional insurance model. So I started looking into other business models for medicine, even in medical school. And I found a physician named Dr. Pamela Weibel who
Hmm.
offered a retreat for doctors that were basically burnt out and not able to care for patients the way they wanted to in their traditional medical business practice. And so I went to that retreat in Oregon and it was really eye opening. One of the things that we reviewed were a bunch of different business models that would allow doctors to have more time with patients so they could help them and also allow them to have more of a work life balance so they weren't getting so burnt out and miserable. And I ended up honing in on the direct primary care practice model just because I felt like that was the best fit for how I wanted to practice.
That's extremely fascinating. I did not know that story. At what point did you make the just out of curiosity, did you make the decision? Like, did you ever go work as like a PCP at a normal healthcare system, like after training or anything? Or did you go right
No,
into the direct model?
no, I only was exposed to that through my residency training
Okay.
in our residency clinic, so I had to deal with that kind of practice there as part of my training, but I never worked out in that kind of practice outside of my training.
Oh, I don't even think I realized that. That's extremely so you just like
Hmm.
went right in from the get-go. And what was the name of that maybe for any physician listener that might be interested in that little retreat you went to? What was the name of that or the doctor?
Her name is Dr. Pamela Weibel. She does not do that retreat anymore,
Okay.
unfortunately, but she still is quite heavily involved in physician well-being and actually does a lot with helping prevent physician suicide.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Good for her. I think that's extremely important, and I know the stat well of the 42% of physicians that report burnout and depression year after year per the Medscape reports, and I know that's very, very real, and, why I really wanted to have you on here, even my experience so there once was a time when I was a young lad, and I sat on a big, like, hospital board. I thought that's, like, what I needed to do to, like, grow our physician practice or whatever, and I found out I'm not really a person to sit on a board, especially, I just kinda, like, did it to do it. But I remember there was this primary care physician, I was, like, 24, and I, like, was very highly recommended, and I waited on a list to get in for, like, 9 months or something like that. It was just like not a direct primary care, just like a traditional model. Great person, but I went to visit him once or twice, and he had about, like, 7 minutes to see me. Anytime I said I had something wrong with me, it was typically like, "Okay, I'll write your prescription. Where's your closest Walgreens?" And I was just like, "Wait, wait, 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 wait." And I don't wanna sit here and, like, beat up PCPs because he was a wonderful guy, but that was
Yeah.
really my first eye-opening experience. And then, of course, there were a couple years that went by after we founded I Am Wealth where I wasn't making any money and I had like very average or no health insurance. And it was hard. It's another challenge as an entrepreneur is like finding good health coverage and things like that. Unfortunately, my path crossed with you from Dr. Tina Metropolis recommended me to you. And I think I waited on your wait list for like a year. And it has been an extremely transformational experience for me. I remember our first conversation. You sat down with me for an hour plus, talked about nutrition, my gut health. And I was like, this is it. This is what I've been like waiting for. Right.
Yeah.
So just curious too of your time in training when you were exposed to like the traditional primary care model. And once again, for the listener, there's nothing like anybody in that model. There's nothing wrong with you. I view it as more of like a systems issue, right? But what frustrated you or what limitations did you encounter when you experience? the traditional model and training?
Well, the main issue is that most of us, including myself, went into medicine because we want to help people.
Hmm,
And so when you have a 10 or 15-minute appointment, maybe 20 if you're lucky, and this person is talking to you about all of these different symptoms, and you realize that they're all related, and that you need to dig deeper, but you don't have the time, all you can really do is prescribe a medication to help with their symptoms, but you can't really get to the root cause of their symptoms and
hmm,
make them better because there's just no time. And then you end up feeling like you're harming the patient, not helping them. And that that presents like what we call like moral injury because
hmm.
are going against what you truly value and why you've gone into this in the first place.
Yeah, and I've heard a quote many a times, like psychologists say that, leading cause of depression or anxiety is when the person you're portraying on the outside is not in alignment with who you are on the inside. So I imagine you experience that. I experienced
Yeah.
it when I was at a larger Fortune 100 financial firm and I wanted to act in everyone's best interest, but there were conflicts of interest behind the scenes
Mhm.
with that. What would you say direct primary care allows you to do differently?
Basically just longer appointments.
Hmm,
I have my new patient appointments are 75 minutes minimum. If it's a more functional medicine approach, somebody who's really complicated, then it's 90 minutes. My follow ups can be as long as I want, but minimum is 30 minutes, usually longer if we are going through some of my extensive testing that I do. So just having that time with
hmm,
the patient, and then a lot of communication happens through the portal, which is great. So patients can ask me questions. I can just check in on them and say, "How is this protocol working?" Or, "Did you try this? Are you doing this?" Or, it's and I don't have the worry of not being able to make money because they're paying me a monthly fee. So
hmm.
it's covered.
I absolutely love that. And part of what we've done at I Am Wealth is kind of built a similar type of model where like our clients pay us a monthly out of pocket as well. And our physician clients absolutely love it. And the portal also, shout out to you for that. And your response times have been fantastic. Even when I've needed like an SOS from the mountains before my wedding for feeling nauseous, you've always been there, and I've very much appreciated that. How would you say just having more time that like the physician patient relationship and outcomes change when time isn't the limiting factor?
How do the outcomes change?
Yeah, just the patient physician patient relationship and or
Oh,
outcomes.
well, definitely, I feel like I have more of a relationship with my patients. I can really ask the hard questions. A lot of times there's crying, which I don't necessarily want to make my patients cry, but I want to hear what's really going on in their lives and try to
Yeah.
work through that. And obviously, I'm not a therapist, so I do often refer to therapists, but feel good to get that information so I can use that in trying to help them. And then, I feel like we have the time to figure out what testing is appropriate, to go through those tests, to talk about nutrition, to talk about, are you having a date night with your partner? Are you getting out in nature? Are you taking time
Hmm.
for yourself and not just being a parent? Because, I think that's so important. Like all of the pillars of health are included in our conversation. And so I get to learn about all aspects of them through that as well.
I mean, I personally have even just felt like way more secure as a human being, being able to like run things by you or like weird lingering little pains I've had in my bodies for a while, even since I didn't have a primary care. And I always wondered and Googled it, which I shouldn't be doing, right? Or chat GBTing it now. And you've helped me feel like way more secure because you can get to more of the root causes and the underlying and give me the time versus just saying like, oh, that hurts. Here's a prescription for it.
Mhm.
Overall, how would you say just practice has become more fulfilling for you? I know you weren't in the traditional model super long, but how would you answer that?
I was in long enough, that's for sure.
I bet.
It's much more fulfilling because patients are getting better. There's a lot
Mm,
less frustration on their end, which obviously is a lot less frustration on my end because I'm actually able to see progress and help them improve. And I do have to sometimes remember that I still can't fix everybody either, which I really
Right.
want to do, and that's really hard for me personally. And so sometimes I just have to remind myself that me sitting here listening to their story and giving them some feedback is help too.
Yeah. No doubt about it. I mean, you can tell me that I'm very sensitive to hops on my food sensitivity test, but you can't, hold my hand and walk me away from the brewery that I visit this summer.
Right.
So I'll always joke about that one. So I want to think a little bit more about, functional medicine and like what it really is, what it means to you. So what does functional medicine? I'm sure everybody's heard the term. Some people might think like, oh yeah, it's health oriented. Some are probably like it's a little bit woo woo or whatever. Like what does functional medicine mean to you?
Functional medicine is basically just getting to the root cause of what's wrong. That can be very complicated, but I often start with looking at the gut. I think the gut is a big foundation of our health, and a lot of things can affect the gut. But even, as with other patients, we look at genetics and how those can affect their health.
How would you explain it to them in the most like simple way possible?
There are definitely a lot of conventional doctors that are skeptical of conventional medicine because it's not part of our training. But conventional medicine or functional medicine is really just trying to figure out what's going on with the patient at a cellular level,
Hmm,
looking at biochemical processes and, like I said, epigenetics, and trying your best to figure out how they're interacting with each other to help resolve their symptoms,
hmm, mhm.
which can be quite complicated. And the extensive testing that we use can help us in that direction. I try to be careful to not overdo it because all of us have financial restrictions at some point. We can't just spend tens of $1,000s on testing for no reason, but sometimes those tests can be really helpful in figuring out what's going on.
And just for the listeners so they understand, because I know I've done some of these tests. Like what types of tests, just as examples, like what would you look at with a new patient? I know you talked about like gut health. We
Uh,
check leaky gut. You and I have talked about heavy
yeah,
metals.
it really depends on the patient. I mean,
Yeah.
basic labs are a good start, even just vitamin D, checking vitamin D because we live in northern Michigan.
Right.
But often I look at gut health. Like I said, I think that's a foundation for your health because of the interplay between the microbiome and all of those metabolites that can help with our digestion and our mental health and everything like that. And down to our absorption of nutrients, even our immune system in our gut. So that's a huge one that I work on for people. I also do occasionally do some mold testing and heavy metal testing or chemical toxin testing, occasional Lyme testing, although that's an area that I am not an expert in. So I
Mhm.
will sometimes refer out if somebody is complicated. But and then I even have dabbled in gene testing. Mostly I just do a few things like MTHFR, COMT, but sometimes we do more
Mhm.
if the patient is interested or we feel like it might be helpful.
Mhm. And I think for the listener right now, and you'll hear this on another podcast as well. I don't know if it'll be released or not by the time this one is. But what kind of kicked me off on this journey was that, my father was diagnosed with ALS about 2 years ago. Right now, it's June of 2026. It was June of 2024. And it wasn't through Dr. Stacker, but someone else in Traverse City named Coco Newton, who is not a physician. However, she's like an ALS nutritionist and very functional medicine focused. And through her work and some things that we've done from like a detox level, my dad has regained, like, he couldn't talk, could barely eat. We were trying to get feeding tubes and having unsuccessful placements. So we're like, how is he going to eat? Is he going to die? Right? Is he ever going to be able to talk again? And through this functional medicine approach of like identifying root causes, detoxing the body, my parents have mold in the house. So we're literally actively ripping out everything right now and replacing it. They think that's like a big potential reason of like the toxic burden in his body. But my dad has been able to regain functionality of his eating and speech for about a year and a half. A year ago, he gave a speech at my wedding and at 10,000 feet of elevation in Winter Park, Colorado, after not being able to talk. And respectfully to the physicians, the neurologist basically just said, "You have 2 to 5 years, you're going to die. Go get your affairs in order." But
Mhm.
this functional medicine world that we've discovered has allowed my dad to have hope and to actually like see not full reversal, but like regaining functionality, right, in certain areas. So, I'm just curious, do you see functional medicine and conventional medicine as competing philosophies or complementary ones?
I mean, I use both. I mean, there's certainly times, especially I would say in the case of somebody who has like severe depression or anxiety, though there's a lot of root cause that can affect those things.
Hmm.
And it requires a lot of work on the patient to get better. But medication can often help that patient do the work they need to do to get better. So I will, in those cases, sometimes prescribe an antidepressant so they feel like they can function and then
Hmm.
work on those other things to help them root cause improve and then potentially get off the medication.
That was a really, really unique example.
Yeah. And I don't think that it's competing. It's just not having awareness of the possibilities and what can go wrong and what can be helped with functional medicine.
Hmm. When you say what can go wrong, like if you solely address the symptom versus the root cause, is that what you were referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, there's obviously there's side effects to medications, and sometimes medications can actually make problems worse
Hmm.
if you're not really aware of what is going on at the root level.
Yeah. I know one of the first things the neurologist put my dad on the Riluzole, which I believe is shown to extend life by like a month. It completely destroyed my dad's gut. Was not
Mhm.
having regular bowel movements. Had like a colic bubble in his stomach that was causing a ton of pain. And the first thing Coco did was fix his gut.
Mhm.
And he's felt extremely better. So once again, I'm not saying that prescription drugs aren't good, but I do know that that was one of the reasons why my dad was having like severe gut issues. And I know you said gut health is number one. And so that was like one of the first things that she addressed. I know that's one of the literally the first thing you and I talked about when I sat in your office. So I want to segue a little bit more now into why, as a country, are we so sick? Like Americans spend more on healthcare than ever before, yet chronic illness continues to rise. I forget the exact statistics, but I know America is like not first in the world in health, even though we spend the most on healthcare.
Yeah.
So why do you think that is?
That's something I could probably talk about for days. There are a lot of things that are contributing to that, but I think one, I mean, the United States is fantastic as far as healthcare goes if you're sick.
Yeah,
Really good at helping sick people get better and or not better, but survive.
definitely.
But our training, I mean, it comes down to our training. Our training is not focused on getting people better. Our healthcare system is not focused on getting people better, not focused on root cause medicine. Our insurance certainly doesn't cover that kind of medicine. Uh, Even just physical therapy, for instance, you're limited to a certain number of visits, and there's a huge out of pocket expense, usually for copays. And for so a lot of patients, it's cheaper to get surgery. And doctors don't have the time to actually help people because they have to see so many patients, and insurance companies are actually cutting their reimbursements. Like if you look over the last 20 years, the reimbursements for doctor's visits has gone way down, whereas administrative costs have gone way up. And that's not helping anybody.
Mm, mhm.
I have to argue, I don't take insurance, but I still have to worry about prior authorizations for my patients. And I have to argue sometimes to get covered for a $40 medication. and I had a patient who has COPD and had a bronchitis and needed a medication to help her not get worse and end up in the hospital, a breathing treatment. Very simple medication. It's been out for years. I sent the prescription. They wanted a prior auth. We went back and forth, couldn't get the prior auth done. She kept having to go to urgent care to get the breathing treatment. And it was a $40 medication. I just told her to pay out of pocket because I didn't want her to end up in the hospital.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it. And I also think just our food is not healthy. We advertise quick and convenient and not necessarily nutritious and fulfilling foods, which
Yes.
really harms us as a society as well.
I agree. Well, I think we'll get more into food in a second. I'm curious, and maybe it's all across the board. Like, what root causes do you typically see most often?
As far as why people are sick,
Yeah.
gut is a big one. I have a personal interest in MTHFR, and I happen to see that a lot of my patients have MTHFR mutations, which is really interesting because I think it's higher even than what's normal in the population.
Hmm.
So my thinking is that people that have that mutation are more likely to have not be well, but not be sick. They don't have anything wrong with them. Their labs are fine, but they don't feel well. They're tired or they have some anxiety or depression or just things aren't quite right. Food eh, sensitivities. So I do a lot of work with MTHFR and optimizing methylated B12 and folate and other B vitamins and looking at those levels as well as gut stuff.
I know it's something specifically that you've helped me with over the last 4 or 5 months. I believe I had that mutation, if my memory serves me correct. What symptoms do you people think are normal that absolutely are not?
Having random rashes, not normal. Eczema is not normal. It's not just dry skin. It's usually related to food. I think that's probably a big one.
What about like gut, bloating, brain fog? Those are like a few that came to my mind that people are just like, "Oh yeah, this is just how life is."
Definitely. I mean, it's you're not having a normal bowel movement every day. I mean, having a little bit of bloating or a little bit of gas after certain foods is not necessarily problematic, but if you're having it every time you eat, that's not normal. But surprisingly, there are people that have a lot of gut stuff that aren't really having gut symptoms.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have had a lot of patients say, but I have, you know, normal bowel movements. Why do you want to do the GI test? But it's because they've got other things going on, like joint pain is another one, joint pain, fatigue, muscle pain, rashes, headaches, and
Hmm.
anxiety, depression, those kinds of things.
Yeah. So just quick pause because I'm always all about action in this podcast for a listener. You're doing wonderful, by the way. I appreciate you. So if our listeners like, okay, this makes sense. I've heard of functional medicine, but I haven't really like dove deep into it. Or hey, I'm interested in this. This has been like me. Functional medicine was on my list for like 4 years before I found you.
Well,
Where would you recommend that just like the listener, because they could be all over the country right now, like where would you recommend that they get started? What would be the most simple way? And should they try to find someone like you who's also like an MD or a DO and functional medicine? Or what's your viewpoint on that?
so I first started looking into the Institute for Functional Medicine.
Hmm.
I think they have a free functional medicine kind of intro webinar, which is really interesting. I think that's geared more towards physicians and medical professionals. I really like Kara Fitzgerald's blog. She has a ton of posts, and she also does podcasts with a lot of different areas that really address different parts of functional medicine, root cause medicine. IFM, the Institute for Functional Medicine, also has a blog. So I think that's a great place to start and to read. And I do think it's helpful to have, if you're interested to go to a practitioner, preferably a DO or MD who's trained in functional medicine.
Mhm.
If you're interested in getting to root cause of what's going on with your health.
Yeah, and that's what I gravitated to because I feel like our relationship has been like a hybrid of PCP and, functional, which I've just
Mhm.
loved and very much so appreciated. So let's get a little bit more practical. I want to talk a little bit about food, gut health, the modern world. What our listener right now who's listening, like what's one or three steps they can do today to potentially work on these things. And then I want to segue after that into actually thinking about like physicians. And I know that they very often take care of others, but sometimes neglect themselves. So just kind of get practical and like what are some steps that they can take to get going, right? So I know we touched on food briefly, but from your viewpoint, like what's happening with our food system? Why is it so problematic?
Well, we're not eating real food. We're eating
Mm.
chemicals. I think that's the biggest thing that I would say. And then we've also changed our food. So it's not a recognizable structure to our digestive system anymore. It has evolved much more rapidly than our digestion has been able to. For example, gluten is something that is a lot more prevalent in our current wheat crops, and it's harder for our digestion to deal with in that kind of quantity, especially if we're eating it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner like I was growing up as a kid. I had
Hmm.
cereal for
Same.
breakfast and sandwich for lunch and pasta for dinner, plus probably some cookies here and there.
Of course.
Speaking of, I think the other issue too is that we have sugar in everything, uh, because it makes things taste better. So that's a big problem for our society as a whole. So I guess my focus for my patients is really to encourage them to start eating more whole foods. Going back to your basic food groups of protein, vegetables and fruits, and good fibers, healthy fats, those kinds of things. For me, I find it easiest to have like a few different breakfasts that I kind of rotate through that are healthy. I make a smoothie for breakfast most mornings. It's just got some greens and frozen berries and flaxseed, hemp hearts, some protein powder, creatine, just a bunch of stuff in there that I probably wouldn't normally eat, but it's, 400 calories, almost 30 grams of protein. Actually, now it's even more because thanks to Chad.
Chad. Shout out Chad.
10 grams of healthy fat and like 20 grams of fiber. So it's pretty filling. Got a lot of great stuff. And I have a couple other breakfasts. I plan healthy dinners for most of the week, get my groceries so they're all home. I get home from work and I can make those healthy meals. And then I make extra and I pack it up for lunch the next day. So I try to make it easier on myself so I'm not having to, you know, come home from work and figure out what to make for dinner because it's already planned out.
It's easier to avoid than resist, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I hate waste, so if it's in the house, I'm gonna make it.
yeah,
Usually, I mean, once in a while, there's a pretty awful day, and that goes out the window, and that's okay, that's life. We're not perfect humans, but it's good to have, like, regular daily habits that you follow most of the time.
I love that. Love that. And yeah, Dr. Stacker and I both go to the same gym and work with Chad, and Chad is very protein focused.
Yes,
So I think my smoothie might have 50 grams of protein in it.
yes.
Obviously, you and I probably have different goals,
I think you have to get different needs for sure, yeah.
needs, and goals.
But I did
Um,
find when I added more protein on his encouragement that it definitely cut my food cravings pretty significantly.
mm, hmm.
Like if I have a lighter lunch without enough protein because I didn't have leftovers and I ordered something takeout with a tiny little piece of chicken, I definitely am having some pretty serious cravings for something fast and quick when I get home.
Definitely. It helps with the blood sugar, I would say as well,
Yeah,
which I'm sure goes hand in hand with the cravings.
for sure.
It does seem like things are happening in our culture and society where people are becoming more conscious of food, even like the big red dye 40 thing that happened like a year ago. Why do you feel like people are paying more attention to ingredients and or, well, I'll just ask that question. Why are people paying more attention to ingredients?
Why are they? I don't know, but I'm so glad they are.
Yeah,
I mean, it's everywhere, honestly. Maybe that's why.
yeah,
Mm. I'm sure the social media has a lot to do with that because there's
for sure.
people out there that are really hammering this into our brains, like, you have to eat real food and not Frankenchemicals.
For our listener who's with us right now, maybe they haven't like paid a ton of attention to the ingredients and what they eat. Maybe they are like, between shifts at the hospital or on lunch break and they're visiting the vending machine in the hospital cafeteria or whatever. What would, from like a food standpoint, what would be the first step that you would recommend that they take that's like simple and they could do it in the next 24 hours?
Uh, Trying to avoid packaged foods, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, one simple thing. It's hard to think of one thing. I guess
It could be
you
five if
could
you
look
said like, hey,
at
do these five things this week.
yeah. I mean, like, you could look at your drinks. Drinks would be a simple step. What do you put in your coffee? Are you putting, artificial creamer in there, or are you using real milk or oat milk or something like that?
Mhm.
Are you drinking, God forbid, are you drinking energy drinks that's full of chemicals or soda? Those kinds of things, cutting out any kind of artificial ingredients in your beverages is probably a really simple step. Food is harder, and I know when you're in survival mode, you have a crazy job, a lot of stress, you're taking care of your parents or a newborn. It's a lot harder to
Mhm.
all those things, and rehauling your diet may not be something that's feasible right this moment. But usually we can start with cleaning up our beverages,
Mhm.
and then slowly making a switch with some of the healthier, or the unhealthy snacks, and just trying to get more protein so we don't need to snack, little changes one at a time.
I think the protein has been helpful for me or just focusing on eating food from earth. There's also a couple of great apps that I use. I don't know what you would think of these, but
Hmm.
Bobby approved. Bobby's just some health guy and he made an app where you can scan barcodes of like any food item out there. And it'll just tell you like, is it Bobby approved with a thumbs up or no? And if it's not, it'll share the ingredients and why it isn't like Bobby approved essentially. And then it'll recommend alternatives.
Oh,
Even like toothpaste, you can scan like a Crest toothpaste and it'll say, here's all the chemicals in Crest, but here's one that we recommend,
love that.
So
That's
it's
awesome.
great. There's another one called Yucca, Yuca, that I used before Bobby, but I think I ended up liking Bobby more. I forget his last name, but it might be Bobby. Is it Bobby Flay? I don't even know. But he's no, not Bobby Flay. That
No,
doesn't
that's
make any sense.
he's a chef.
That's a chef. It's not Bobby Flay. I think his brand is called Flav City. He makes like proteins, so I think that's where I
Okay.
got that from. Anywho, for the listener, that might be helpful as well. Let's talk a little bit about the gut as well. Why do you feel our gut health is connected to so many different symptoms and like one of the most important things that someone can address?
Well, as I mentioned before, I think our microbiome is extremely important. When we eat healthy foods, we feed the good bacteria in our gut. And the good bacteria, when they flourish, they produce a lot of different metabolites that end up being beneficial to us. So they're basically considered commensals. We benefit each other. We have a synergistic relationship. So we feed them, they feed us. Their metabolites can help with things like calming our anxiety, increase our cognition. They can help with our circadian rhythm. They can even produce vitamins like vitamin K, and they can help us with absorption. They can produce metabolites that make the gut lining nice and cushy and healthy for them instead of being, a barren desert. So that's huge. And then in addition to that, when we have harmful bacteria, we can have the reverse, and we can have bacteria that increase insulin resistance and make us more prone to diabetes. We can have harmful bacteria that cause us to reabsorb estrogen. And so we can have excess
Hmm.
of estrogen, which can increase our risk for estrogen sensitive cancers like breast cancer, because our body is trying to get rid of some of it and we threw it out of balance. And then if our gut is damaged because of inflammation caused by having harmful bacteria or food sensitivities, then we end up having what's called some leaky gut, which is basically when the tight junctions in our gut barrier cells become weak and holy, basically. And then lots of things can get into our bloodstream that shouldn't normally be there. And that can basically trigger our immune system and cause inflammation. We're also not able to absorb nutrients when we have, that inflammation as well.
And from your viewpoint, how does like I know like the gut brain axis, right? Like how does that coincide with it? I imagine it can affect your brain health as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, the gut produces serotonin, and that's really important for your mental health. The vagus nerve is connects your brain to your gut. So it's not uncommon for somebody who has trauma or a lot of stressful events to have issues with their gut.
Interesting.
And sometimes when I have patients who we've just worked and done all these things to improve their gut and we're not getting anywhere, it's because of past trauma and we have to address the trauma before their gut can heal.
That's so fascinating. What are some potential signs that could be I would like to go down that rabbit hole further, but we'll save that for another episode. What are the signs? Well, I'll say this real quick, but Healing ALS is an organization that we followed that's helped my dad tremendously, and they have some like proven reversals, and they have a 47 steps to like reversing ALS basically. And step 21 that I listened to this morning was about addressing your trauma
Um,
to help you reverse ALS, which sounds like woo woo, right? Of course, to someone that's not familiar with it, but this the timing of that was fantastic. We'll save that for a future episode. But what would you say are some signs that someone's gut needs help or support?
Having weird rashes, having muscle aches, joint aches. I mean, yeah, if you have arthritis in your right knee and that hurts sometimes, that isn't necessarily your gut. But if you have a lot of different pains in your joints, just feeling tired all the time, even having mental health issues like depression and anxiety, if you're not absorbing the nutrients you need to make the neurotransmitters like epinephrine and or sorry, dopamine and serotonin, then you're not gonna, you know, feel good.
Mhm.
So, I guess those are the most common things I would say that make me think gut, but,
And if our listener right now has maybe never addressed their gut, or maybe they have and they want to like figure out what they can do better, what would be like the first thing you recommend that they do? Is it go right to a probiotic? Is it find someone like you and do like, I think the first thing you and I did was like the food sensitivity and leaky gut test. Maybe not everyone has access to that, but maybe there's one online. Like
yeah,
what would be the first thing you would recommend?
not an online test, but even just if all you could do is just feed your good bacteria, you don't even necessarily need to do super expensive tests or take a bunch of, supplements. Some of my patients do because they're really feeling unwell, but just eating a lot of different foods with probiotics in them,
Hmm.
yogurt and kefir and low sugar kombuchas, low sugar yogurt, I should say too, sauerkraut, kimchi, but also feeding the good bacteria with things like, the alliums, garlic, onions, leeks, chives, shallots, raw asparagus, all the dark berries, fiber, potatoes and rice when they're cooked and cooled are great fiber. What else is a really good fiber? Green bananas, chicory root, inulin, all of these different fibers, and just having a variety of them because you want to have a variety of good bacteria in your gut. Sun fiber is probably my favorite supplement fiber because none of us get enough fiber. Even, I eat a lot of fiber, but I still supplement because I just know how important it is for gut health. So sun fiber is a pretty clean fiber that mixes nicely into water and you can just drink it real quick, and that would be a great start. And most people tolerate it really well.
That's a good reminder for me. I did that about a year ago. Should I start again?
I
It's
mean,
on the spot.
I would for sure, yeah, because yeah, most of us just don't get enough. And
Yeah,
especially if you're eating a lot of protein,
for sure.
which is important when you're doing strength training, but it's hard to eat a lot of protein and a lot of fiber because they're both very filling.
Yeah, it's very hard, very hard. No doubt about it. So if we just think about like food in the gut for someone maybe overwhelmed by all the information
Mm.
online, everything we even talked about was a lot, but even though you gave a lot of great details, what actually matters? Like at the end of the day, what would you say matters?
As far as food, what
Food or gut?
I got variety, colors,
Okay.
real food.
Hmm,
I think those are the biggest things. And
I love it.
and we live in Michigan right now. We have tons of local fresh stuff. And if you can get
Hmm.
your hands on that, that's even better. I know in the winter we're kind of limited to what we can get. And I mean, that's okay. We do our best, but as much as you can, eating local fresh stuff is also great.
Yep. I love it. So at this point, I want to shift gears for a minute because everybody listening, or most, I'd imagine, are physicians. And one of the themes of this podcast and why I did the Your Health is Your Wealth segment on a physician's guide to wealth podcast about money is don't become the richest person in the graveyard. And physicians dedicate their lives to helping other people become healthier, yet so many quietly neglect themselves. From your standpoint, why do you think physicians struggle to become their own patients?
Mm. I don't know. Maybe it's a personality disorder. I have the same problem. I mean, I'm doing a lot better now. I think turning 50 scared me a lot for some reason, but
You don't look 50.
oh, thank you. But we go into medicine to help people. And so for some reason, I think that means we often put ourselves on the back burner and just focus on other people. There's a lot of pressure to being a physician, pressure from your employer, even from your family, to be
Hmm.
a breadwinner. And I'm not saying I have that pressure necessarily from my husband, but you still, I mean, there's big student loans to pay off,
For sure.
those kinds of things. And so there's this expectation that you work this number of hours. And I think especially if you're in a hospital system, it's really hard to change that and to push back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a physician client that I saw today who's a surgeon, and she has going to have a baby in a few weeks, and they're like not going to give her any time off, basically.
Well,
And it's just like I just can't even like one how she feels about that, but how any employer could do that to
right.
an employee. What just like do you see like consistent patterns when physicians specifically come or work with you? Are there common health issues that physicians ignore, or are they all across the board?
I would say for the most part, the physicians and really a lot of the patients that come see me are more health focused than
Yeah,
average.
yeah, makes sense.
People, yeah, my patient panel, they definitely tend to be people that are really looking into their own health and wanting to take care of themselves.
Hmm.
So I don't think my panel is typical.
That makes sense. Definitely makes sense. What would you say for the listener right now? What mindset shift would need to? I know for you, maybe you said it was turning 50. Need to happen for the listener to stop believing they have to sacrifice themselves to care for everyone else, and they can start taking care of themselves.
I think when you realize that it's really hard to take care of other people when you're not taking care of yourself. Like
Mm, mhm,
start to resent other people for
mm,
wanting time or information from you. And that to me is a big red flag that you're not getting what you need.
mm.
You have to nourish yourself and take care of yourself. And then it becomes much more easy to freely give of yourself.
Absolutely. One of my favorite analogies is the airplane example of put your own oxygen mask on first
Hmm.
before you help others.
Yeah.
I think of that very,
Yeah.
very often. You
Yeah.
can't be all you want to be to your patients if you haven't taken care, or your family or your friends or your
Mhm.
children. And I know this is, personal for you too. I'm sure you've gone through it. Like, how do you carve out time to care for yourself while caring for so many other people and also your family?
Mhm.
What does that look like for you?
It's imperfect. It's always a juggling act. Sometimes
Hmm.
my self-care falls aside and I have to take care of other people or my job takes over, but it's always something I'm trying to maintain as best I can, and I don't know why it took me until 50 to do it. Made me go in. I mean, I did better job before I went back to school and became a doctor. That was a lot of work, and I had to push my self-care aside for a while, but I think I don't know. It's a struggle. I start with the basics. Sleep is really important, and nutrition, and then getting some movement in and having that on my schedule and following that as best I possibly can. And as it turns out, those doing those things affect my family positively. They get healthy
Mhm.
meals. My daughter and I now work out together. There's my husband and I play volleyball together. So there's this domino effect of me taking better care of myself has helped them also benefit.
I love that. It's that, like, lead by example, and then they come
Mhm.
along and come with you, and I've seen you and your daughter at the gym. I think that's awesome. What are, hmm, what are some of your own, like, health non-negotiables? Or, like, I know you're not about perfection, so we don't have to say non-negotiables, but as close as possible to non-negotiables.
I've made it a priority to do my strength training 3 days a week.
Hmm,
Try to be active other days and do other exercise as well, but that is like my solid go-to. I get that done on pretty much no matter what. I mean, we went on vacation and didn't have a gym, and so I didn't worry about it for a week, but normally that's pretty set in stone. I might shift days if I have something that conflicts with my schedule, but 3 days a week. I'm doing a lot better. It's still a work in progress, getting to bed earlier.
hmm.
Still not quite where I wanna be, but I'm better than I was. So, I do.
Progress over perfection.
Yeah. I have my healthy smoothie pretty much every day for breakfast, so I always have a healthy breakfast. The rest of my day, not always is great. Most days, I try to get healthy nutrition in, but I do have nachos once a week. We have our family movie night. We go out once a week, which sometimes can be healthy, sometimes not. But, I do also let myself have those days, and I don't worry about having a couple of times where I'm not eating exactly the way I would like to all the time.
And I think that's been super helpful for me in working with you and Chad as well. It's like there's no perfection in this, and you can feel you don't beat yourself up with that like mental chatter after you do
Mhm.
maybe have the tacos and the margarita or whatever it is. Also, I'm sure this episode will be just music to Chad's ears of us talking about strength training, protein. So if any listeners ever in Traverse City, Michigan, go check out Strength RX. That's
I
great. And Table Health, where Dr. Stacker is, of course. What would you say to a physician who says, "I just don't have the time to take care of myself," or maybe they're in residency or fellowship? I know that's even more challenging. Like,
Mhm.
how would you challenge them?
Residency is hard.
Yeah.
For physicians, I would say, what can you do to change your schedule so you do have time?
Hmm.
Because sometimes it's really, I mean, when you're working an 80-hour week, that really is a struggle. Can you change that? Does it have to be this way? That would be a big thing. But then the other one, for a resident, having some have hmm, that's such a hard one.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
But just doing whatever you can, because you can't say to a resident, "Have a schedule and stick to it," because they're always doing different rotations, and
for sure.
they're really there's not a lot of flexibility that they have, but anything they can do to get sleep. Like, when I was a resident, we ordered, those meal delivery services, and that
Oh,
was
yeah.
huge because my husband isn't the most, well versed in the kitchen. He's great at helping me,
You said that in a very kind way.
but having those meal delivery kits was great because he could follow the recipe, and I could come help sometimes when I had the ability, and if I didn't, he could do it, and we could have healthy meals and not have takeout, and that was a lifesaver. I love that. So I think those are huge. Whenever you do have time, like making a batch meal, a stew or something healthy that you can freeze and eat later, That's awesome. Getting a 10-minute walk in nature, amazing for your mental health and physical health, even if it's, like I said, 10 minutes. And meditation actually is great because that's just 10 minutes a day. And I think that's been huge for me. I do it every night before bed, and half the time I fall asleep before I finish, which maybe that's not ideal, but hey, I'm doing it. And I think a resident could do that easily because that's only 10 minutes a day.
Yeah. I love a good meditation. Also, thanks for the reminder on the meal delivery service. Every summer, because summer, as you know, in Michigan, we try to squeeze in a full year and 4 months of things to
Mhm.
do and fun to have. And my nutrition typically doesn't go fully to the side, but little to the side. So that's
Uh-huh.
a good reminder for me, just for like meal prep purposes, to maybe do those like factor meals or something like that.
Yeah.
And I liked what you said too about like, can you change your schedule? Because we've had physician clients, like one of our clients, one of my business partners' clients, she's a breast oncologist, and she was able to negotiate like a typical 9 to 5 schedule, and I think either no call or maybe call like once a month or once every 2 months, and that just came from like negotiating her contract. So there are ways to pretend. I know not every employer will negotiate with you, but there are definitely ways, and we've seen it happen firsthand. If you could write one prescription, not a medication,
Mhm.
but one daily habit that every physician adopted,
Mm.
what would it be? Hard to pick one, I'm sure.
One. One. I guess I would say get enough quality sleep. Like
Hmm,
that unfortunately involves a lot of things, but going to bed early and having darkness and quiet and a cool bedroom and no blue light before bed and, the whole ritual around that. But sleep is so important. It's nearly impossible to do all these other things if you're not getting good sleep.
yeah. What would you and I'm a sleep princess myself. I got the blue light blocking glasses, I got an eye mask, I turn down the temperature every single night. Do you typically recommend, like, 7 to 8 hours? I know it's hard, probably hard for some, but
I mean, the studies really show that between 7 and 8 hours are the most beneficial. Less than that is harmful, more than that is harmful. 7 to 8 seems to be the sweet spot.
okay,
I mean, I'm always preaching that everybody's different. So studies show that is most helpful. There's going to be some outliers to that,
for sure.
but don't use that as an excuse for not getting enough sleep.
Amen. Amen. Couple super quick rapid fire questions, and then we can wrap up. This has been fantastic. I know you, Dr. Stacker, voice being a little nervous before this. Have to call you out. But I was a guest on a podcast like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, every time I'm a guest, my heart rate is just up. So you've absolutely knocked this out of the park, and thank you so much. This has been such a joy for me, and I think our listeners going to get a lot of it out of it as well. Quick questions. You can answer, a sentence or two if you'd like. One lab marker everyone should know.
Vitamin D.
Vitamin D. Okay. One food you wish people ate more of.
Mm, spinach.
Spinach. Okay. Pop for
No,
Popeye.
actually, I'm going to change it to broccoli.
Broccoli.
Yeah.
Okay. One thing people should stop doing immediately.
Drinking energy drinks.
I love that. One, I know I already kind of asked this, but one like daily non negotiable for you.
Strength training. It's not daily, but movement.
Movement. Love it. Favorite health or wellness book?
Mm. I I really liked The Younger You by Kara Fitzgerald. That was super
Hmm,
interesting. Um, a lot about methylation,
okay.
which is really important for our health.
I haven't heard of that one. I'll have to check it out. Biggest myth about functional medicine?
Myth?
Yeah.
That's woo-woo, I guess, that there's no evidence behind it, but it is all based on evidence.
Yeah. I love it. And the title of the podcast, A Life Well Lived. What does a life well lived mean to you in this season?
Mm. I have had family health problems lately as
Mm,
have, and I feel like relationships and family and friends
mm.
are most important, and despite yes, I want to have my own health be ideal or optimized, but don't forget about your relationships because when it comes to the end of it, why do I wanna live to 100 if I don't have those relationships?
I love that. I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you for being open, and I'm right there with you. If you ever need to talk, I
Thank you.
understand and get it. You never think it's gonna happen until it does, so this was so awesome. Thank you so much. And last thing, where can our listener like find you if they want like at social media or if they somehow are in Traverse City and they want to book an appointment? What does it look like?
Tablehealth.com
Okay.
is our website, and they can learn all about us there.
And just so the listener knows, I moved 2 hours away and I still work with Dr. Stacker. So maybe that's possible as well. Any do you have social media or anything or no? I forget.
I have I'm not really active on it. I would
Okay.
like to be more active, but I've been
It's all
making my
good.
health a priority lately, and eventually I will be more active, but
Okay. Cool. Tablehealth.com. Best place on earth. Thank you so much. I
yeah.
appreciate you, and we'll definitely have you back.
Okay. You're welcome.